Almost every week now, in this era of unalloyed, unmitigated, indefensible nonsense, before I write the sermon I end up preaching, I first write a first one. And that first sermon I write every week is heartbroken and angry. That first sermon despairs at the recklessness of those in power. That first sermon roars at cruelty. That first sermon takes the week's latest outrage, holds it up and says, "Look at this. This is wrong." And this week, after Venezuela, that sermon practically writes itself. I think of chaos unleashed and who it's going to land on. I think of the mobster-like and thuggish disregard for international norms, which invites China now to take a second look at Taiwan, which invites authoritarians the world over to feel at ease in brutality. I think of the absurdity of the claim that we will now run Venezuela from somebody who has not yet demonstrated in his life that he knows how to run anything. So I think about all this and I get angry. And I want to say a word about anger because anger is useful. It tells us what we need to defend and protect. But anger ultimately is insufficient. Outrage, when the dust settles, is not a compass. Outrage can tell us what we're against, but it can never tell us where we need to go. And if church becomes only a place to recycle the political adrenaline of the week, to repeat the headlines and hot takes we already know from reading the very same media outlets, then we have confused agitation with orientation. Outrage is not a compass. So every week, I tear that first sermon up, not as denial, not as disengagement, but as discipline. And when I do, I try to remember something older than this current news cycle, even older than this country, which is that there is nothing new under the sun. Wickedness, I think, has always been with us. After all, this White House, which now does damage with seeming impunity, was built over 200 years ago by enslaved hands. This nation, which speaks so fluently about freedom, has long practiced domination, especially in Latin America. So in this country, let's be clear, there has been no clean chapter, no innocent age. There is only and ever the long unfinished struggle to become at long last what we say we believe. And so in moments like this, the deepest danger, I believe, is not whatever the president has done. The danger, I think, is what chronic outrage will do to us. How it scatters us, how it makes us reactive, how it leaves us roaring and unrooted. And a people of promise and purpose can't afford to linger there long. Staying mad doesn't serve us. So today, before we take one more step into the still dawning year of 2026, I want to invite us all to remember the wider story of love that we're walking and moving inside of, and what we are bound for. This morning, when I say what we are bound for, I'm talking about two things. They're related because, as I see it, we are a people of promise and of purpose. The first, what we're bound for, is about the ties that bind us. Why on earth we would join our lives with others in covenant. In other words, how we're a people of promise. And after that, the second, what we're bound for, is about the journey UUCA has up ahead if it wants. When we join our lives together, where will it take us? In other words, as we look forward, how will we be a people of purpose? So first, what we're bound for, what binds us, the promise, covenant. I want to tell you one way that I experience covenant in my life. In 2 weeks, I'm going to sit down with my old friend and writing accountability partner, Stephen Schottenfeld. He will have read something that I've written. And because he loves me, he's going to tell me the truth. Not the cruel truth, but the hard truth, the faithful truth. That's what covenant looks like to me. And Stephen and I have been doing this now for coming up on 30 years. Because Stephen believes that I can be better and do better. When we sit down, I know he's going to call me to higher ground. He's going to point to the places where I settled or compromised, where I protected my ego instead of serving the work. And I've learned that I won't always enjoy hearing it. But I have learned to trust it. I trust people who tell me the truth. Because this honesty is rooted in commitment, not contempt. To me, this is something of what covenant looks like a mirror, like what LB held up to us all. So think about yourself here in January 2026. If you were going to take your own relationships into the shop for an 80,000-mile maintenance check, what do you think the inspection would show? How honest are you being with your fellow travelers, your companions here at UUCA? How vigorously are you inviting each other to come to higher ground? Or, flipped the other way, how much are you inviting your companions to be honest with you? How much do you greet one another in the spirit of humble confession, asking for accountability, asking for the help to get to higher ground? Are you allowing yourselves to make memorable and game-changing impact on each other? Are you getting deeper than nice, further than chit-chat in your relationships with people at UUCA? Are you being bold and transformationally risky in how you relate? Covenant is what happens when we give other people permission not to control us, not to shame us, but to call us with gladness and courage toward who we are becoming. When we live by a promise, we're not bound by each other as if we were trapped. We are bound for each other, for your becoming, for my becoming, for a future that we cannot reach alone. So let us make this a place anchored in a promise that deep, a place where we practice telling the truth in love, a place where we learn how to hear hard things without breaking apart, a place where we are called again and again to higher ground. And because covenant is our compass, here is the next question. When we do bind our lives together as one, when we give ourselves to each other, what kind of journey is UUCA actually set out on together? In that second sense of what we are bound for as a people of purpose, not only a people of promise, what is up ahead? This past week, an inspiring group of Buddhist monks made its way through Atlanta on a cross-country walk for peace. They're going 2,300 miles from Fort Worth all the way up to D.C. Maybe some of you saw them? Yeah. I think they changed the moral landscape of every place they passed through. I would aspire to do the same in my life. We heard the story earlier about the Simurgh, the 30 birds in that old Persian tale, who travel across valleys and adversity toward the divine. Some in this room, some of you, are also on a journey here in January 2026. The journey perhaps from addiction to recovery, or from despair back to hope, or from isolation to reunion. Well, UUCA likewise is on a journey. You have come a long way, and I celebrate that. But I would also say that you're not finished yet. A further journey beckons. What will it take? What will the journey ask of us? What will it require? In response, my thoughts have turned this week to the Latin world. While in this country, many people who celebrate Christmas took down their lights and packed up their trees a week ago, Across Latin America and also in this country in Latinx households, the big day is still coming this week, this Tuesday, El Dia de los Reyes, Three Kings Day, the 12th night of Christmas, the crescendo to the whole story when the three wise men arrive in Bethlehem. Tomorrow night, January 5th, in places like Venezuela, children will place their shoes by the door, sometimes with a note, sometimes leaving out hay for the camels. When they fall asleep, the shoes are empty, but by morning they're full of gifts. In town squares also, the story is reenacted. My wife Molly and I have spent a good amount of time in rural Mexico, staying with families of the migrant farm workers she works with in Tennessee. So I've been lucky enough to see firsthand El Dia de los Reyes in different communities. In the parade through the square, the three kings process slowly, and drums echo off the stone walls, and children point and smile, and so do elders with memory and love. As they travel through the square, the Magi do not rush, they take their time. You might say that the pace is glacial. I have come to see that the pace is theological. And then there's the bread, the rosca de reyes, sweet, circular, jeweled with fruit. Hidden inside is a small figure of the Christ child. Whoever finds this tiny prize is not only lucky, there's now a burden on them. Those who receive blessings must be a blessing to others. They must host, gather the community again. If you find the prize, this is your role, the responsibility to widen the circle. As a person of ridiculous privilege, when I have spent time in these communities bearing witness to the unyielding faith and the practice of remembering and celebrating who they are and are becoming, I am chastened and inspired. How dare I be hopeless? So let's look at the story much of Latin America will tell and remember this week. I think it has a message for us who are people on the way, to seek, to savor, and to shift. So in the Gospel of Matthew, as the story opens of the three kings or the Magi, Herod is on the throne. Fear is in the palace. That may sound familiar. Herod, for all his power, is threatened by the dream of the people. Imagine. So he summons three outsiders to come to him. He wants to send them on a mission to hunt down and shut down the one love has foretold. The Magi ask him a dangerous question. Where is the child who has been born king? It's a dangerous question, I say, because already in the same room they are suggesting that Herod, for all his worldly power, is not ruler of all, that there is, in fact, a power greater, one who is instead king. By any faith, proclamation, or spiritual path, this is what we insist on when we organize ourselves around the light of love and the call of justice, something bigger and deeper and longer lasting than whoever has been elected. And so these Magi set out on their journey with more questions than answers. This is the nature of the journey of faith when we decide to follow a distant star, be it only a glimmer of hope every time. Seeking always starts before certainty. In this story, the journey of seeking is costly. Borders are crossed, and it takes a long while. And as they follow the star back at the palace, you just know Herod is a nervous wreck, unsettled. Following the power of love instead of the power of the state is not without risk. But as we do now, the Magi continue tenaciously to follow the call of love in a spirit of wonder, daring to not know, to continue to seek. Then the star stops. They enter the house and they see not a throne, but a child, and they fall down. Actually, what I think happens is that they fall in love. Before mission comes presence. Before justice comes love. Before transformation comes adoration. So on our journey, on our way as we seek, may we also savor. May we be unafraid when we find it to dwell in the shelter of delight. After we seek, may we savor. And finally, warned in a dream, these magi, the story says that they go home by another way. Not back to Herod, but by another way. As I hear it, this is not a matter of geographic convenience, but instead nothing less than the process of transformation. They go home by another way. If you meet love and your path doesn't change, I don't think you met love. I think you just met an idea. You know that you have been touched by love when your life has been changed by love. When you go home now by another way. When your plans and perhaps even your identity shift. Seek, savor, and shift. 3 modes of the journey toward love and delight. That's the journey of the Magi as they seek love and savor love and shift how they travel in response to love. So here's a question I hear this story asking us as people on a journey, as a people of promise and purpose. Where are we now being invited to seek, to look up in wonder instead of scrolling past in despair, instead of settling into certainty? Where are we being asked to savor, to linger in love long enough to let it soften what fear has hardened? How will we let ourselves wallow in the presence of each other and the gifts we each bring? How will we savor in 2026? And where, because love has changed you, because love has changed us, do we need to shift course? How, like the Magi, do we need to go home another way? To stop cooperating with what diminishes life. Because faith is not about finding meaning in some online article and returning then to business as usual. Faith is about finding love, giving our lives over to it, and because of it, choosing another way home. UUCA, this week and every week, we are living in a Herod kind of world, but this week and every week, Herod doesn't get the last word. The power of the universe, the power of life and of love is still hanging stars in the sky. There are signs we can follow, invitations that beckon, and we will not walk this road alone. We are a people of promise and purpose. When we are not strong, we will lean on each other. When the road feels long, we will lean on love. When courage runs thin, we will lean on our ancestors who walked before us. When hope feels fragile, we will lean on the promise that love wins in the end. As a people of promise and purpose, we are bound for becoming, and we get there the only way anyone ever has, all together, one step at a time. So when the night is long and the way is not clear, let us lean on that